Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Today's topic, invest when you have the money.
Thanks, Dallas. So our position is that when you have the money, if it's for investment purposes, you should invest it then.
That day, that very day.
That very day.
Yep.
Do not delay.
As the great Nick Murray says, when should I invest this money that I want for my retirement? By nightfall is his answer. Any time before nightfall.
So it's come up a couple of times recently, and an example, having a discussion with someone the other day, and in the planning phase, we worked out they had a sum of $200,000 of cash, and we worked out that they really wanted to keep $100,000 of fallback money, so that money would stay in cash. And we'd identified that the other $100,000 was to be put towards their accumulation for their retirement, i.e. was to be invested into their superannuation fund. And they said, okay, well, why don't we dollar cost average this in? And what they're referring to is trickling that money in as opposed to putting the whole 100,000.
A little bit in now, and then a little bit in a month or 6 months or 12 months, and then another bit after that, and so on until it's gone.
Yeah, and when probed a little bit further as to the reasons why, they had a hard time verbalizing why. But what came out of it was, what if the markets fall? And I said, what if they do fall? What if they go up? Like there's a two-way street here, and I'll get to my point in a minute. But basically, they saw that the only risk to them by trickling that money in, as opposed to deploying all of it at the same time. And remember, we've already got our fallback money over here of $100,000. We're not talking about talking about money that had been identified for
ready to invest
for planning related long-term future harvesting purposes. Their opinion was that they should trickle that money in to avoid what they thought was a risk of investing a sum of money now and watching the markets fall almost immediately. That's a two-way risk. Our position is dollar cost averaging is market timing by another name, and we don't advocate timing the markets. I think people get confused sometimes because they think that we recommend dollar cost averaging because most of our clients get paid fortnightly, and we say
put money in
every fortnight, and people mistakenly see that as dollar cost averaging. It's not dollar cost averaging. It's just that was the first time they had the money.
It's 26 separate investments throughout the year. You get paid on that day. That's when you have the money available to invest. You invest that money then. A fortnight later, you get paid on that day. You invest the money. Then. It's not. You don't have a lump sum of money that you are trickling out of every fortnight. It's just that as that money becomes available, that's immediately when you go and invest it.
And if they're investing $1,000 a fortnight, had their employer paid them all at once for the whole year, our advice would be on the 1st of January when you get your whole year's worth of salary. We want you to put $26,000 in because you've got the money there.
Would be quit your job and run away and go and get a job somewhere else and keep the money. No, I wouldn't say that.
But it sort of it again. I mean, we did a long podcast just recently on my thoughts that people were still really, really fearful about the markets falling. And it of course people are. No one can predict what's going to happen in the next 12 months or the next 2 years or the next 3 years or necessarily even the next 5 years. Now, with historical perspective, we know that looking forward over the next 20 years, right now is likely to be one of the lowest points in time that you can actually invest looking forward.
Yeah.
Looking backwards, it's the highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
But there's every year on average that's the case throughout history. So so what you're buying, if you delay buying until next year or the year after when you had the money now, you are missing out on the profits of the great quality companies that you can invest into. You're missing out on those profits.
Well, you're essentially now you're making a bet, and this is the point I think you're making, is that people tend to do this when they don't want to make a decision. So they go, I've got $100,000. Should I invest it? And I guess the way that we treat it is that it's functional. It's an irrelevant question. Should I invest the money? Yes, because it's part of my plan. Okay, well then just invest the money. Don't then think about, well, will the prices be higher or lower in 1 month or 6 months or 12 months? And I think what happens is, if people dribble the money in, they feel like they're not making a decision or they're not making a bet, and you're just taking the other side of the trade, which is that if I put the money in now, I'm just putting the money in going, okay, well, on average, prices rise over the long term. Therefore, if I've got the money available now, I should just invest it now and forget about the price. If you go, I'm going to hold some of that back and I'm only going to put it in every month or every week or every 6 months or 12 months or whatever, you're essentially, whether you mean to or not, you are making a bet or a prediction or something that prices will be lower at the time when you do go to invest that. So, in that case where you got $100,000, if you go, right, I'm going to invest $50,000 this year and then $50,000 a year for the next 3 years, you are essentially making a bet with that last $50,000 that you put in. You are betting, you're almost hoping that prices are lower in 3 years' time than what they are now. And I think this is your point. You touched on some of the numbers here about you can make that bet, but you don't have the odds on your side at all.
No, well, when we get to odds, the odds of the great quality companies of Australia and the world being higher over a 12-month period than they are of being lower is something like 75%, if I'm not mistaken.
So 3 years out of 4, prices will be higher, and 1 year out of 4, they'll be lower.
Yes, I mean, if that's the only data that you had, if you were forced to make a decision and recognise it's a decision, so delaying investing is a decision. You might think, no, I haven't made the decision to invest yet. You have still made a decision. The decision has been to delay that in the hope that you will see some sort of drop or something like that, and you can buy for lower prices, I think is the thought process. The odds are stacked against you in doing that. So you wake up, you take the 1st of January and you take the 31st of December. Three out of every 4 times, the price, historically looking back, the price of the good quality companies in Australia and the world with dividends reinvested is going to be higher on the 31st of December than it is on the 1st of January. So if you're looking at, I mean, all we know is statistics. And if I'm looking at that, I'm forced into a decision,
which I am.
If people say to me, what's a betting? Pick 2 cards. Pick. There's a card on the left here, the card on the right here. So pick 2 cards.
Well, that's a great analogy. If you got to pick a card off a deck, and there's a 1 in 4 chance that it's clubs, and then there's a 3 in 4 chance it's not clubs. So you have to make a bet. Do you bet on clubs or not clubs? Every day of the week, you would bet on not clubs.
Yes, absolutely.
There's 3 in 4 chance I'm going to be right. I have to make a choice. Clubs or not clubs, I'm going to pick not clubs. Now, I think, and this is, I think, the point that you touched on here is, no one's saying that there's no chance that clubs is going to come up.
No,
because there's still a 1 in 4 chance that can happen, and that's I think the bit about this is that my latest little fascination thing that I'm ticking over in my brain is the concept that so many of our financial decisions are not necessarily just about how to optimize for financial outcomes. The big thing that I think we all try and do is avoid feeling silly. And so I think what happens is with this is a case study of people's fear is not necessarily, I don't think their fear is, I'll invest $100,000 and then it will drop by, it'll drop by 10% temporarily, and then it'll go, it'll be double that figure in 10 years' time. Because intellectually we kind of go, I don't really care. Like, I know that doesn't really impact my. What we're really fearful of is that feeling silly. So I'm going to invest this money. I've painstakingly saved it over a long time, or I've got it from the sale of something that I've got that money here. I'll invest it now, and then in a month's time it'll be worth less, and I'll feel dumb. And that's I think the dangerous thing there is that it feels as though if I do that and that balance has dropped, I've made the wrong decision, and I've done something silly, or I've made the wrong decision. And I think that's. That card analogy is perfect, because you wouldn't, if you picked not clubs and then you picked the card as clubs, you wouldn't go, oh, I'm an idiot, I should have picked clubs. You just go, oh, geez, that's unlucky.
That's unlucky, yeah.
And then you'd sort of move on.
Yeah, look, I think you're onto something there, Dallas. I think that is more than likely right. People want to avoid looking silly. They can intellectually understand that it doesn't really matter, because we can present a data set, and the data suggests time and time again that it's length of time being invested, not timing of when you invest, that makes all the difference. So there was a podcast that we did where we looked at the likely, I think it was called the likely returns over the next 30 years, and we actually looked at the data. Yeah.
It's basically within 0.5%.
It doesn't matter. And every year that you delayed, like even when the price was going backwards, we thought, okay, well you've
managed to time
it a little bit better. But you'd missed out on a year's worth of returns. And it made virtually no difference. Over a plus 20-year time frame. So the other thing that I've seen dollar cost averaging do to people is it drives them absolutely crazy, because
you then have to look at the price all the time. You don't have to, but you look at the price all the time.
You're inherently looking at the price all the time. So, and look, the way to go into dollar cost averaging. Not that we are saying going into it, but they always say you have to have a rule of thumb. So you say,
I'm going to do this.
I'm going to put in $10,000 a month for 10 months, and I'm going to do it on the first of the month. And then you take out the human error element. Then, however, what I've seen in practice is as people do that, they're driving themselves crazy by looking at the price, and is the price going to be the lowest it could be on the first? And the price was actually lower on the 28th of the month before, and if we'd only put the money in then, it's gone up again on the first. So they're actually driving themselves crazy for the best part of a year. Whereas by and large, if you invest the money now and you forget about it, now it may, Murphy's Law may see the price drop 10%. Over the month after you've actually done that. Hey, that's another statistic. On average, the price will drop somewhere around the 14%, 15% mark every 12 months. Some stage during a calendar year, the price of the great quality companies of Australia and the world, on average, will decline by 14-15% some stage during that period of time. And still, 3/4 of the time will finish up higher than it started, even with that drop. So it's just something that it ends up driving people crazy.
And I think the follow up to that is where we've seen people try and do this is that if you can't get comfortable with the idea of, so you got the $100,000, you can either invest it in a lump sum or you can put it in $10,000 in the first of every month. If you can't get comfortable with the idea that price is likely to drop at some stage throughout that year, if you can't get comfortable with that enough to invest that lump sum, and so you say, I'm going to invest the $10,000 in the first of every month, what does also tend to happen there is that you can't stick to the plan because you invest your $10,000 for the first 3 months. You put 30,000 in. Yeah, then prices drop by 20% or 15% or 10%, and you get scared and you don't invest your $10,000 next month. So even if what you thought, even if what you were most worried about does come to fruition, and 2 months after I've invested my first lot of money, prices have dropped by 20%. The whole point of the intellectual argument for dollar cost averaging is if that happens, then I get to buy some of those shares at a lower price. People don't follow through, and they don't stick to that because they're now paying attention to that short-term movement. They've put $30,000 of their hard-earned in, and now they've watched it drop to $26,000, and they go, well, why would I put more money into this thing? I've just watched. Why don't I just stop and wait for it to stop going down, and then you really are timing the market. So I think that's a great. Like the three parts of that, like we said, is we don't recommend dollar cost averaging because historically and probabilistically it just doesn't make any sense, and even if it did make sense, or if it didn't put you in a worse position, it'd be painful because you then end up watching the markets every month.
Yep.
And then thirdly, even if everything does play out as you sort of most feared or most worried about, and prices do drop, you're probably not going to stick to the plan, and you're not going to invest the money when you said you were going to invest it anyway. So there's just no. You basically, you're taking on a burden that you didn't need to take on, and torturing yourself over the course of 10 months for something that not only is it not useful, but it's not relevant or it's not important.
It's not relevant. It's not important. And here's the really liberating rule of thumb to work by.
Yeah.
When you have money for investment purposes available to you, invest it then.
Yeah.
Anytime between now and nightfall, as you said, Dallas before, the great Nick Murray would advocate doing that.
Yeah.
When you need that money back,
take it out.
That's when you take it back.
Yeah.
You withdraw.
Yeah.
When you need it, you invest when you have it.
Yeah.
And you withdraw when you need it. Now, are you going to get your decisions right all of the time?
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
But certainly, by statistically, that's a very, very good investment rule of thumb to be able to follow.
Yeah, I think that probably covers off on that. And just to clarify, I guess, a little bit on that withdraw when you need it. This is one that we see all the time where people get the invest when you have the money. So every fortnight you get paid, you invest the money. When we approach retirement, I've said this before, like it's like going up an escalator and seeing the edge coming up, and people sort of, it becomes this big scary thing. When we're talking about withdraw when you need it, in the first year, if you've saved up $2 million and you want to spend $100,000 a year in retirement, in your first year of retirement, you don't need $2 million. You need $100,000. Mm-hmm. So you don't get to age 64 and a half and plan to retire at 65 and go, I'm gonna put all my money in cash, because that's essentially what you are doing then is you're withdrawing far more than what you need at that moment in time. So we won't get into the details of a drawdown strategy and the rest of it, but that's part two. What you're saying is simple rules of thumb are useful, I think, not just because probabilistically it puts you in a better financial position, but it's liberating from the point of view of there is no right answer. It's not like if you paid more attention to the markets, you'd be able to know when to invest and when to withdraw your money in retirement. There is no way to know that. So just take all the energy and all the time that you were going to spend worrying about that, and go and do something more fun or more useful or more something with that time.
Absolutely, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.